Hello and welcome to the Today's Homeowner Weekly podcast. We're here to help you with the challenges we all face as homeowners. I'm Danny Lipford.
And I'm Joe Truini. And each week, Danny and I are here on the podcast to answer any and all home improvement questions.
And we want to hear from you. Send us your questions or comments at todayshomeowner.com/podcast.
Okay, Danny, let's get started.
Today's Homeowner podcast is brought to you by the Home Depot. More saving, more doing. On this week's podcast, we answer a number of paint questions. You know, painting is one of the most popular home improvement projects, but sometimes things kind of go astray. We try to get it back in line on this week's podcast.
Yeah, sometimes it's the paint itself. Sometimes it's how you apply the paint. But yeah, we get a lot of questions about painting. In fact, and we also get a lot of recorded calls left on the Today's Homeowner hotline. And we're going to answer as many of those as we can in the shortest amount of time.
And we all want to remind you, you can participate in the Today's Homeowner hotline anytime. It's 1-800-946-4420. It's a 24-hour day, 7-day-a-week opportunity for you to ask us any question that you may have. And of course, we also have a special setup on our podcast at todayshomeowner.com/podcast that you, as a podcast listener, can ask us questions directly. And we try to, add those to the podcast as well. You know, another thing, if you have a range hood, especially one of the more modern ones, whether it's inside or outside, and you have the 3 little halogen lights, you might not realize you can actually change those to LED lights. But getting those things out when they're burnt out and they're flush is a real challenge. But Joe has a perfect little way of handling that. So we look forward to sharing that with you.
And if you've got a room remodeling project that involves removing baseboard molding, I've got a great simple solution that can show you how to do that safely without damaging the wall.
So again, thanks so much for being with us here on this podcast. Right now, we want to head to Texas. Peggy is on the line. Peggy, thanks so much for being with us. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. What's going on there? You're having a little challenge here.
I am. I'm having what I'm calling a primer fail. I'm not sure what happened.
Okay.
Not sure where to start.
Okay.
But I followed all of the directions I could find at all of the websites, multiple websites, and it's still sticky after a week of having painted it.
So you put the primer on, and what is it? Walls, trim, cabinets? What do you have?
So I'm starting with the bathroom cabinets. I moved here about a year ago. I cleaned them with Dawn and a green pad, hot water. I sanded, and I vacuumed, and I cleaned again with alcohol to make sure there's nothing left. Waited several days, and then I put the primer on, and it's still sticky. And it's been 8 days now.
Oh, boy.
This is an oil-based? I assume it's a latex base, right, Peggy?
So it says it's acrylic.
Yeah, that's latex.
Right. It's oil.
Yeah, that's latex. And what kind did you use? Do you not remember?
I do. It's called Fresh Start.
Okay, Benjamin Moore. Yep.
Primer. Yeah.
Yeah. I just painted I'm very familiar with Benjamin Moore primers and paints because I just painted our kitchen cabinets. It's a great product, by the way. Yeah, well, now this is a wood cabinet door?
It is. It had like a pickled finish. I don't know what that is exactly,
okay.
But I'm sure it had varnish on it.
Yeah, stain and then some kind of lacquer or varnish or something, yeah. Well, it sounds like you did everything you need to do, and it's latex. It certainly shouldn't take more than an hour or two to dry, even if it's really humid out. I'm not sure what to tell you, so it's still tacky, the primer.
Right, so if I push on it, not just if I touch it, it's somewhat dry, but if I push on it, it's tacky. If my
you leave a fingerprint behind. Yeah, you leave a fingerprint behind.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, you're smart to wait and not do anything else because you can't apply anything over that. I mean, the only reason that I can think of, you can call Benjamin Moore. I'm sure they have a hotline. Leave him a email or see if you can get a hold of someone. The only reasons I know that primer doesn't dry or any paint doesn't dry, even paint doesn't dry, is that there's super high humidity or you applied it so thickly that it just can't dry. But I'm sure you didn't do that. And even after this amount of time, you think even if the humidity was high, you're in Texas, I guess it might still be warm down there.
What about the mixing of the primer? Were you careful about shaking it up or stirring it real good? Is there any possibility that there could have been separation in that primer before it was used?
So I had just received it the day before, and I had color put in it. So I know it was taken then, and then I stirred it, before I painted it.
Right. So you tinted it. You had it tinted toward the finished color, the final color. Yeah.
Correct.
Now, you find it tacky? Is that tacky on every place you applied the primer, on every door or every surface?
It is, and it's even on the paint stick, because someone suggested maybe the alcohol would have made it not stick or whatever. And
right.
I wondered if the paint can go bad. I don't know if it was never opened.
No, that would be pretty rare.
Well, generally, it's usually when you have freeze or you have cold or any situation, or very rarely having a bad batch, if you will. Usually, that's just where the makeup of the paint is separating, and that way it doesn't dry, it doesn't cover well. It may, have other problems on there. It's pretty rare. I mean, a lot of times when these kind of situations happen, it is because somebody using old paint that's been maybe gotten cold and separated and so forth. But with this scenario, the only thing I would know, it seems like I talk about fans all the time, and you would think putting a fan on something after 8 days, it wouldn't necessarily help. But that would be the thing that I would do first, is I would just put a fan, any kind of little box fan or anything, directed straight at that, just so that it gives it the best opportunity to dry completely. And that may allow it to harden, and so that you can move forward. But that's a tricky one. And what Joe suggested on the Benjamin Moore hotline, that may be a great idea just to see, because I'll bet others have had the same type of problem, and it may be very simple. But you almost have a stumped here, because that is a tough one.
I think I'm at the point where I'm going to have to sand it or strip it. So then my next issue is, what kind of stripper do you use on a vertical surface?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would take the doors off, because that's the way to do it.
Yeah, take the doors off, be a lot easier.
Right.
There are a number of very passive type of strippers that sometimes work very, very well, especially with a newly applied paint. I always, when I go to the home center to pick up some type of stripper like that, I usually buy 2 or 3. 2 or 3 small cans, because a lot of times this one will work perfect on one project and not on the other because of the makeup of the finish. So, and I know we used one recently to strip down a table that was a citrus-based type of stripper that was not very caustic, and boy, it worked great. It just worked perfect, and you didn't need the more aggressive type stripper. And I would bet that would be sufficient for what you're working with there.
So you think that wouldn't just drip to the floor? Because I've used the citrus strip on a door, but it was flat.
Yeah.
My cabinet boxes, vertical, so I don't.
A lot of this is pretty thick. A lot of this, you can actually get a gel stripper that is thick, and that's good for the vertical surfaces. But as Joe mentioned, I would certainly take the cabinet doors back off so that it just works easier for you.
Hey, Peggy, can I offer you one other possible solution? Is before you get disconnected, give the producer your email address. I have a contact at Benjamin Moore, and I'll contact her with your question. And if I can get an answer, or even if I don't, I'll email you back, or I'll have her email you directly. How about that?
Okay, sounds good.
That's good, Joe. Well, thank you very much. Sorry we couldn't give you a more conclusive answer, but we'll keep chasing it, and Joe can help you out on that contact and find the best way to go on it.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys.
Okay, thank you, Peggy, and hope that problem gets behind you. That is very frustrating. Right now, let's see if we can help Mike in Wisconsin, another painting concern. Mike, what's going on? Tell us all about it.
Okay, I have a house that's 24 years old, and the front of it faces the northwest. The front door was a combination of the door plus 2 side light windows. The side lights, over the years, the wood trim keeps getting worse and worse, and I've sanded it down a couple of times, repainted it. Once or twice I tried caulking it with some acrylic caulking to see if that would work better than the paint. Last year I sanded all the bad spots down to the bare wood, reprimed the whole thing, and then painted the whole thing over again. And we're not even through winter yet, and all that paint is cracking. And
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what to do. Somebody suggested I should have used oil-based instead of water paint, but I just wonder if that was enough of a suggestion, or whether I should try to tear that wood off and replace it with those plastic brick molding.
Yeah. Well, so what side? What direction does it face? Is that
Northwest?
Okay, it's northwest. So you're not getting that direct.
And you're in Wisconsin, so I suspect you get a lot of wind. Go Packers, by the way.
Yeah.
But I suspect it gets really beaten up. It's not covered in any way, right? There's not like a little roof over it or anything protecting it. It's
you're
not
absolutely
inset. Yeah.
Nope, you're absolutely correct. Yeah, we do get a lot of wind. I even thought of naming my house Lufthaven.
Well, it does have a lot to do with that primer. If it's peeling back to the raw wood, then that primer is just not holding up. I like, in situations like that, to use an oil primer and then an acrylic latex over it. Because of expansion and contraction, you're going to have that wide temperature fluctuation, and it's tough for paint to really hold up on that. Now, the oil finish on to put oil primer and then oil finish is really not recommended because, again, it doesn't have the flexibility. But I've found many times in going with the oil primer that'll really soak in and provide a good base, and then put the latex over it, allows it to expand and contract. So that works pretty well. But, Joe, what do you think in terms of a bonding primer? Do you think that might be a good way to go in this case?
Yeah, at first I was surprised that you said it was wood, because so often those side lights and the lights, the windows in the doors are trimmed in plastic, and part of the reason is the reason you're experiencing, because especially the bottom half. I bet, Mike, you find the bottom half of the trim, like from waist or chest high down, especially along the very bottom horizontal, is the most decaying, right? Because all the water and all the snow piles up against it.
Runs that way, sure.
Yeah. So if I would say if there's, a bonding primer, certainly if you can get back to bare wood, but I wonder if you're not better off if you could find a replacement in plastic, just go with it. And I'm a guy who loves natural materials. Believe me, I wouldn't be suggesting it, other than I also hate maintenance that you have to do over and over again. And you're in Wisconsin, you're facing northwest, the wind keeps blowing, maybe it'll be facing southwest sooner or later. Just turn your house around. But until that happens, I think you might want to cut short the maintenance, and if you can replace it with plastic, I would do that.
Okay, that was you've prompted two questions. The plastic is one I was going to get to as my second question. The first one is if I can find this bonding primer, is there a name you recommend, or can you do that? And can I paint that over the paint that's there, that I don't sand everything down to the bare wood?
You can apply primer over paint that is stuck on really well. So you don't have to necessarily go down. Obviously, if it's flaking or peeling or molding, then you have to clean it, scrape it, get down to bare wood. But and as far as a brand, I always use like something from Zinsser, or you can find at Home Depot, 123 prime block or that kind of thing. Any of those would work. Make sure it's exterior grade, that's all.
Okay. Now, regarding the plastic, I think that these molding strips were probably screwed on to begin with, because there are some regular dimples which look like maybe they were puttied over,
they usually have plastic buttons, like little plastic dowel. You have to pry them out, and you'll find the screws behind there.
Well, Mike, certainly hope we've been able to help you with that problematic door. I'll tell you, sometimes, especially when you see that going in and out of your house every day, it can really stay with you. One of the other things, our today's homeowner hotline certainly has gotten very popular, where, and we try to reach back to every single person that calls, and sometimes it gets backed up a little bit. We're not able to answer every single question. But what I thought we would try this week is to take a lot of the recorded calls. There's a lot of them out there that people have left us some questions, and again, we try to answer as many of them as we can, but we thought we would try to loop together a number of these questions and see how it works, and see if we can handle a lot of these questions, because so many of these questions might be something you have in the back of your mind that you want to try to see. So let's give it a go and see how many of these we can answer.
All right.
I got a garage floor that about 6 months after it was poured, I noticed that the floor was starting to crack. It's now 2 or 3 years later, and I've got significant fractures in the floor. And I was wondering if you could give me some advice as to what I might use to repair it.
Okay, well, I'll tell you, concrete does crack, and unless you give it a place to crack, then it's going to be kind of unsightly. Garage I recently built, we put an X pattern right down the middle of it and just divided it up with score joints where we actually cut about a half-inch groove in the bottom of it. Now, it's probably cracked, but you don't notice it because it's in the bottom of those expansion joints. In a case where you have cracks in concrete like that, then you are able to clear those cracks out. 'Cause I'm sure it's just an expansion and contraction crack. You can put a straight edge, like a 4-foot level, over it to see if one side's higher than the other. If it is, then that's a settling crack and a lot more serious. But 99% of them will be just expansion cracks. You can kind of groove it out a little bit, blow it out with a leaf blower, and then use a floor patch compound to fill in all of the cracks. But it's going to be a little unsightly there as well. That's where the resurfacer, I'd suggest you go to quickcrete.com and find out, and some of the videos that are available there to help you out.
I'm outside now. My water faucet won't come on. No water will come out of it on the outside of my home. Is there anything I can check?
Absolutely. The very first thing you check is to make sure the valve is open inside the house. There's always a valve leading to those outdoor faucets, and so you want to make sure it's open. And if it is open, then what you can do is there's a nut right under the handle called the packing nut. You want to loosen that up a little bit. If you loosen it too much, water will start to leak out. But you want it just tight enough that you can operate the handle, but not that water leaks out. That's what I would recommend.
My house is 33 years old, and in the last few months, my rafters on my ceiling is beginning to show through the ceiling. What causes that?
Okay, I think referencing actually ceiling joists, which your drywall or plaster is nailed or screwed, hopefully screwed to. Well, what happens a lot of times, you have expansion and contraction again in all parts of your home, and a lot of times those nails will start kind of working their way back through, or in some cases you actually have a shadowing that for some reason it really will show up on that. Either way, it's a matter of removing any nails that you might see. You can take a needle nose pliers, pull those out, then use drywall screws to secure it really, really well back to the ceiling joist. Then you're going to have to use a little joint compound, usually a couple coats at least, in order to really smooth that out, lightly sand, then apply 2 coats of paint, usually a flat ceiling white, over it, and you'll probably be good for another 20 or 30 years.
I'd like to know what the proper method is to move a heavy appliance such as a refrigerator across the vinyl floor. Need to clean behind the refrigerator.
I've got the exact way to do this, and all you need is a piece of tempered hardboard. You might know it by the name Masonite. Get 3/16 inch or 1/4 inch. The 1/8 inch might be too thin, and just lay it in front of the refrigerator and roll it right across there. You won't have any problems at all.
I have washed down my kitchen cupboards, but still feel that greasy film on them. What can I use to remove that film before I can touch up the stains and revarnish them?
Boy, I'm glad we got this question because we've got a great solution for this. And what you basically do, get a clean sponge, wet it down, put it in the microwave for about 20 seconds and get it heated up. Then use gloves, because the sponge obviously is going to be hot, some vinyl gloves, and then a citrus cleaner in a spray bottle. You spray it on there, and with the citrus cleaner, a deglosser or degreaser rather, along with that heated sponge, will just about melt that grease off of there. And no matter if you have painted cabinets or stained cabinets, it will make a big difference in how it looks. You might be surprised at how nice of a kitchen you really have once you get all of that layer of grease off of it.
I'm remodeling my bathroom, and I want to know whether it's better to use faced insulation for the vapor barrier or whether I should use unfaced insulation and put up a piece of plastic.
I would recommend using faced insulation. There's no need to put up the plastic. You can use either foil faced or craft paper faced, but that's all you need. Then you can go right over that with your tile backer board.
There you go. I'll tell you, you can certainly go to the Today's Homeowner Hotline, leave your question. We'll see if we can't do this every week because we do want to provide as many answers as we possibly can. And to tell you the truth, a lot of times the questions and the answers to the questions are very brief, and we can get to a lot of questions like that. So I would encourage you, did we spawn any questions in your mind right now? Well, go right now now to the hotline, 1-800-946-4420, and ask your question. I'm thinking barbecue here. We've got we're going
Why
to
is that?
Kansas City. John is on the
yes.
phone, and John, I know you're sitting there with a plate of ribs, wondering if you want to do any work or not. But tell us what's going on at your house, and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. I'm fighting with a bedroom door that doesn't close. It is a wooden 6-panel door, and it catches at the top, not on the side. I've tried to make some adjustments with the hinges, and that doesn't seem to resolve the problem. If I can get it to clear the top, then it's striking on the side. And this door is a true 80-inch door. It doesn't appear as though it's been planed or cut back in any way. But I'm just fighting with it. It closes over a carpet floor at this point. At some point when the carpet gives up, it's going to become hardwood, but the wood, that shouldn't be an issue with it. I'm just not able to get it adjusted to where it will close.
Well, now, something's out of square there, John.
Yeah, when you're standing there and you're looking at it, the margin around the door in relation to the frame, then it's probably all fairly even until it gets to that upper area above the strike, and it just tightens down there.
Correct. Now, I put a square on the frame itself, and it's not square in the upper corner of the strike side. Mm-hmm. Right. So I know that there's some issues there. One of the issues in this area is the clay in here, and the houses shift, and I know we've had issues with cracking and everything else here. And we've been in the house for almost 20 years, and I know that it has shifted in a few places, but apparently the wall that this door sits in happens to be the exact center of the house. It sits over, there's a metal I-beam that runs the width of the house, and it sits right over that, and I know that the house is settled. There's even a small crown going both directions from that plate, but it sits right over it and runs parallel with that.
I got you. Well, a lot of times when you adjust these doors like this, especially if it's just a minor scenario like this, you try to do it with the least amount of impact as possible. And one of the first things that I would do, because I hate to plane a door or to make a door not square. So you could take a piece of 2x4, maybe 6 or 8 inches long, and hold it right at the jamb, and then hit it pretty hard with a hammer, and see if there's a little bit of play up on that upper part where it's sticking, and see if you can move that jamb up just slightly, because I bet 1/8 of an inch would solve the problem.
Yeah, I think it would. Yeah. I don't know that the gap would be consistent, but that may be a starting place. Like I said, I've adjusted hinges. I've tried loosening screws, and it appears as though the top and the middle hinge don't recess completely in to the frame. They stand proud just enough that you can feel the difference.
Right. Uh-huh.
But those being if I were to recess them, I think that it would complicate the problem a little bit more, because that would raise the far end up a little bit. So I'm not sure that that's the issue.
Yeah, that's what I would be afraid of, is it's just going to cause another problem. So if you tried to, and a lot of times I've taken a small diameter screw or even a nail and nail it straight up into that jamb real carefully and recess the nail. A lot of times that will kind of push it up just enough that the door clears. And that way all you have is a nail to deal with, and instead of, because to take the casing molding off and to re-square the door, then you've gotten into paint and all kinds of caulking and everything like that.
Oh, yeah.
Now, so that would be my first approach. The second approach would be belt sand the top of that door real carefully, that you don't round it off, and just belt sand the top of that so that it makes the clearance. So those are the two most minor ways of doing it. And this probably is a result of some kind of minor settling, nothing to be concerned with, as long as your walls aren't cracking or anything like that. But I think I would try those two approaches first to see if that would remedy it without having to take that casing off and looking what's inside there.
Now, in your suggestion of using a 2x4 and just literally whacking it, do I need to maybe cut the paint? Because I know that the trim, I've put a couple coats of paint on there myself, and I know that there were some before me. And the paint is relatively heavy on there. I'm not sure if I'm going to run into any issues with that. I know when you go to remove trim, you want to cut it so it doesn't break. I'm wondering if, in doing that, if maybe I just want to touch it with a sharp blade.
Well, that's pretty sharp of you. Sharp blade. Did you see what I did? I didn't mean to do that, but that's very smart of you to know about that trick, because a lot of people won't do that. But yes, I would suggest possibly scoring that in a couple places just to give it a little bit of a relief. Because again, you're probably not talking about 1/8 of an inch to solve the problem, and sometimes the paint will actually have that amount of flexibility to move it.
Yeah.
So it might be pretty easy to do that. And like I say, I hate to cut a door off and have the top of your door look different and so forth.
I've got another door next to it, and someone has cut it because it's 79.5 inches.
Right. Yeah.
And I've got an issue with it. We won't talk about that one today. That one, I think I'm going to have to add a wedge to it to bring it back up to make it look square. So that's a whole other ballgame. But you said you use a belt sander. What about just a hand plane, a good hand plane?
Yeah, you could do that, even though on the style side, on the far end, you would be planing that end grain, which is a little tricky.
Yeah.
So sometimes that can be a little hard. And a belt sander just seems, if you get in good position and keep it nice and flat, you're able to control it a lot better, it seems.
Okay. One other question.
If you have a power plane, John, that's a tool I use all the time.
I do not have one of those. I've always thought about getting one, so this may be...
you could definitely get one. I bought a really affordable Ryobi about 10 years ago. I'm still using it. I think it cost $39 at the time, so I would invest in one of those. You'll find uses for it.
I know when I get into projects, I usually find a tool that I need that becomes just part of my payment, my self-payment for my projects. So,
well, good.
I do have one other question. Okay. When are you coming to Kansas City for barbecue?
Well, I tell you, I was there a few years ago, and I love the place up in there. And we'll have to make it out there again. I'm not sure exactly when it's on the schedule, but we will definitely keep your name in contact so that you can point us to the right place.
Well, you just have to draw my name on your contest, and when you come up and do some additional work here for me.
You should know you can't bribe us with barbecue. It has to be barbecue and cold beer.
and a Royals game.
That's the right combination.
To learn more about the products that we talk about here on the podcast, just head over to todayshomeowner.com. Time right now for our Home Depot Best New Product that's brought to you by the Home Depot. More saving, more doing. Now, if you're like me, you've probably lost track of all the people that may have a key to your home. Your kids, your neighbors, your family, the list goes on and on. So why not be able to control that without changing locks over and over? The Nest X Yale lock lets you assign passcodes to family members and guests and alerts you when someone locks and unlocks the door. You can also let people in via remote access on your smartphone with the Nest app. This keyless deadbolt eliminates lost keys and prevents an intruder from picking your lock. You can also set schedules to let people in, access history, and get alerts when someone locks or unlocks the door. Just tap to lock on your way out, or the auto lock feature can lock it automatically when Nest knows you're away. It also works with the Nest secure alarm system, so when you unlock the door, the alarm disarms immediately and automatically. It comes in satin nickel, oil rub bronze, polished brass, and you can find out more about the Nest X Yale lock by going to HomeDepot.com. More and more smart home technology.
Amazing how engineered those are.
Oh, yeah.
So smartly engineered, yeah. You used to have to punch in the code to lock the doors.
Right.
Now you punch it just to get in,
right.
and you just close them, and they lock like within 5 or 6 seconds. They just lock automatically. Yeah, that's great.
It's really amazing, and so many people are looking at ways, especially now. One of the things that are really making the whole smart technology for your home easier is because it is so do-it-yourself friendly, so intuitive, so easy to install yourself. You can, just like this, you can put just this lock in with the Nest app. Later on, you can add something that turns your lights on and off without having to rewire everything. A lot of different ways that you can really go at it. It's amazing with the International Builders Show I just came back from in Las Vegas, which is the largest builder show in the country. Everything is wireless. Everything is controlled, monitored, connected, and so it can get a little confusing. But they're working hard, all the manufacturers, to really simplify it to where it really they're pointing to the benefits, not just the gadgetry part of it, but the benefits and security and safe and convenience, and all of that makes a big difference in today's home. So. We'll keep sharing with you a number of different things like that.
I bought a new range hood last year.
Right.
And it came with 2 halogen lights, which were beautiful, nice and bright lights. One of them burned out recently, so I was going to replace it. And I discovered that you can buy exact replacements. I was not aware of this. Maybe most people know this. I did not know this. You can buy exact replacements only in LED versions.
Oh, really?
And LEDs, they last a lot longer than halogens. They cost less, and they stay much cooler.
Now, is that the type that screws in, or is it that funny little locking, turn and lock type of
Well, of course it didn't just screw in. That would be much too easy.
That's right.
These are the type of bulbs. Exactly right, Danny. You have to press them up and rotate them a little bit, and there are 2 little studs sticking out inside the socket, and the bulb drops down. But the problem is they're perfectly flush, so with the bottom of the range hood, so there's no way to push them up. There's just not enough space. I'm like, how am I going to get I struggled. I tried like a little piece of rubber that you'd use for taking the lid off a jar.
You got me interested now because I have one bulb.
Right.
I tried the same thing on my outside range hood, and it's got the little halogen things in it, and you can't get your fingers around it.
No. So here's the trick, how I finally got that bulb
I'm taking
out.
notes. I got my pen. Okay.
It's very simple. I just took a piece of duct tape, maybe 6 or 8 inches long, and I folded it, pinched it in the middle so it was kind of T-shaped.
Yeah.
So the pinched part is hanging down. That became like a little handle with the adhesive exposed to the top. I just stuck it on the bulb. And that's all it took. And I used I used the little vertical piece of duct tape as the handle. Like I said, I press it up and I rotate it. Now you have to make sure you're rotating it the right way. And I assume it's upside down, but I think you still rotate it to the left. And you only have to rotate it like 1/8 of an inch. So anyway, I might shoot a simple solution to that because it worked really well. I struggled for maybe 10 minutes. I took the piece of duct tape. I finally thought of that, and it took 2 seconds to get it out. So
I was at the point that I was ready to maybe take a drill and just drill the darn thing enough that I could reach up in the light fixture with, some pair of pliers or something, you know. And, how people used to use potatoes that they would reach into broken bulbs. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I mean, there's 3 lights, so I got 2 out of 3. So it wasn't an emergency, but I was planning on doing a little grilling this weekend, and I kept thinking about that. So I'm going to grab the duct tape. I happen to have about eight rolls handy. And see if I could peel off some and give it a try.
It was snowing here this morning in Connecticut, so my grilling season hasn't started just yet. But good for you. I hope you get out there and grill up some fresh fish.
Now we want to shift it over to our simple solution of the week.
Well, I was replacing some baseboard molding recently, which is a very easy, very common home or room remodeling project that do-it-yourselfers can do. And the trick, though, is when you're prying the molding off the wall with a pry bar, you often have to pry against the wall itself. And if you're not careful, it's really easy to dent the wall, or I've even accidentally pushed it right through the wall. Now you have a drywall repair besides replacing the baseboard molding. So here's the simple solution. Just take a 1x4 or 1x6 or even a piece of 3/4 inch plywood, and you put that between the wall and the 2x4. So when you're pressing it, you're actually prying against that board. And if you make the board at least, let's say 2 feet long, it'll probably span two studs in the wall, and that gives it even more support. Because sometimes if you pry really hard, you can actually dent the wall with the board. Mm-hmm. So get it long enough so it spans 2 studs, and then pry against it, and you'll find that the board also serves not only to protect the wall, but it works as a fulcrum, making it a little easier to get that baseboard off the wall. And that works for, chair rail as well, or anything nailed to a wall that you need to pry off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great simple solution. That certainly can solve a lot of problems, and it brings up the caution when you're doing any kind of remodeling project. Because, man, you're all hyped up and you're ready to get in there and do some work. And many times the deconstruction of certain components of your home, whether it's the chair rail or whether it's some moldings around there, if you're really careful with that, not only can you save a little money by reusing that, often it will match the original type of material a lot better. Just this week on our show, we relocated a door unit and closed the original door opening up. Every single piece of that molding, because we took our time a little bit, we were able to reuse everything right back in the new wall. So again, you're saving money, you're saving trips to the store, and you're able to make it look a lot better. So it's all in how you prepare and approach for any project that you do around your home. Now it's time for the podcast question of the week, and this one comes from Thomas in Bakersfield, California. Involves leveling a house. How do you level a house that's built on piers? Is it something I can do myself? I'd really like to try if at all possible. Any information you could share would be appreciated. Well, Thomas, I'll tell you, that is certainly a specialty type thing that requires, a lot of equipment, really, especially nowadays with the technology and all the different type of hydraulics that are available and air-powered jacks and all kinds of things like that. It all goes back to how minor or major the settling of your home may be. If it's just one isolated pier, well, you know what? You can pull some strings under there to get a reference point to see where the low point is. You can buy or rent some of the bottle jacks, 12-ton, 15-ton jacks, and get a good base on it, and you can jack that up to a certain point and then re-support the pier in order to keep it there. But, Joe, when a lot of times houses will kind of have a roll to them,
right, yeah,
and different areas, and boy, that's when you have to go back to the perimeter, level it, and then level everything in between. I think that's where you kind of draw the line and have to bring the pro in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if this was a small, like a cabin or something like that, or like you said, if it's one corner, you can support it enough to dig out that pier and replace it. Yeah, you could probably do it yourself, but it can be relatively dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. And we're not sure what the soil conditions are underneath this house. I mean, if it's really, soft and spongy and it have a lot of water and you can't get a good footing for those jacks, they might not hold. So, yeah, I would call in a pro at least to have him take a look at it and get an idea of what's involved.
All right, great. That pretty much wraps up our podcast for this week, and we want you to be able to reach out to us. Pretty simple. todayshomeowner.com/podcast. And also, we mentioned earlier about our Today's Homeowner hotline. I also want to remind you that it's 1-800-946-4420. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Feel free to leave us a question and any tip that you may have. Any comment, general comment, we welcome all of the feedback. We also would like for you to write us a favorable review. That really means a lot in the podcast world to be able to reach a lot more people, to be able to share our type of home improvement information. So certainly appreciate you being with us on this podcast.